Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Environmental Social Justice. I'm your host, Wendy Nystrom, and today's special guest is Erik Distler. He is the Vice President and Head of Sustainability for AEG. Welcome to the show, Erik.
Well, thank you for having me, Wendy. Really excited to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. And, what I find the work you do to be absolutely fascinating, because many people are probably not familiar with everything that AEG does. But before we dive into that, could you tell us a little bit about your personal background? Because you actually started off as a financial analyst.
Yeah, I did. I'm a bit of a career convert into sustainability. Yeah, so I'm sort of quick professional background. I started out my career, as you noted, in finance and accounting. So I was with Deloitte & Touche as an auditor right out of undergrad. So quite different from what I'm doing today. But there is some transferability, I think, as we find throughout our careers and what you take. But did that for a number of years, was in accounting and finance and risk consulting. And then, for me, I've always had a passion for environmental issues and grew up in the Midwest and sort of, areas and places and spaces with natural space, and was really interested in topics around conservation and, sort of what I could do and how I could contribute to that. And I think that just rolled its way into this topic of and career area of sustainability. And so I went back to graduate school. That's how I got into sustainability. Certainly someone with an accounting and finance background, years back, wanting to get into the space, needed that secondary education. So graduate school, a degree in sustainability and public administration. And it was there where I shifted. And since then, for the last, 12 years or so, I've been not only in sustainability, but essentially working in the entertainment space within that thread.
Most people would not necessarily think that sustainability has such a huge footprint within the entertainment industry, which is specifically why I really wanted to talk to you about what AEG does and the work that you guys are doing. So really briefly, could you tell people, just as a nutshell, what AEG is as a corporation?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So AEG, we're Anschutz Entertainment Group, organization that is owned by Phil Anschutz. We are sort of a mix of a lot of different things in the entertainment industry. So our company has really sort of four different distinct, business divisions, if you will. There's a music division where we own and operate music venues, music festivals, and we're the promoter on tours of artists who are out on tour. We promote their tour, take them on tour, essentially. We have a sports division where we also own and operate sports arenas. We own a handful of sports teams and have the large events that we may put on in that capacity. We also have a ticketing company, AXS. So our ticketing company is a really big sort of piece of innovation when you think of an app and original content and what we can do with ticketing. And then, I would say all of that, within all of that, a lot of that is real estate, but we do have, I think, what we could consider a real estate portfolio where there are mixed use commercial entertainment districts, LA Live, for example, in Los Angeles. We're building the Nashville Yards in Nashville. We have the O2 in London, Uber Platz in Berlin, and then, countless other developments. So a lot of real estate, a lot of buildings and infrastructure, but also, things like festivals and other temporary events.
Very cool. And yeah, when generally people go to events, they don't think about who owns it, who runs it, all the logistics that go into it. And with what you guys have to worry about, I know you have to worry about energy. Where are you getting your electricity from? What you're doing with all the waste. There's a ton of waste generated from events. Where are you sourcing your materials? How are you getting things there? So with what you do, and obviously you're the expert in this, what's your primary concern when you guys have events?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, you're right. I mean, I think any sort of sustainability department is always looking at what are the most material topics, what are the most material impacts to our business, and certainly energy, waste, and water are significant. We have a strategic framework and strategy and a whole approach that our function takes, which I can certainly get into. But yeah, I think when it comes to temporary events, so I think one way to sort of think of the entertainment industry, I mean, sports and music, is this sort of unique distinction between events that are happening in venues and events that are happening in temporary spaces. When it's temporary, right? So we own and operate Coachella and Stagecoach festivals, as an example, out in the Palm Desert in Indio and Palm Springs area. We sort of come in and build and put together a lot of infrastructure and then break it down and exit. So there's lots of, things like temporary power we're looking at. So what types of Are we using generators, and can we use cleaner sources of temporary power?
Yeah.
Water, how we use water and our impact on water in these local areas when we show up and build and construct a music festival. And and I would say waste is probably the topic that we spend the most time on, really from the standpoint that it touches the fans, right? So our fans sort of see and feel and touch the materials that end up in our waste stream. So if we focus on impacts that are core to all, what is most material to our impact on the environment, but also want to focus on areas where, where we know our fans are touching and feeling, and we can actually find a way to educate and give some information to them on how they can contribute to reducing their impact.
One thing I was thinking of with respect to waste management is people go to concerts, they may not necessarily know what goes where. And I've been to places where they say, put your recyclables here, your compost there. It's a little hard to follow, especially when you're running by and you're like, I'm just going to throw it.
Yeah.
How do you manage like the behavioral concept of getting people to really pay attention and this is what needs to happen?
Yeah, it's really challenging, right? Because we know when people are at a festival or at a sporting event, we know they're there for, taking in their favorite actor show, the love they have for their sports team, and probably thinking about and being really conscious about spending a few seconds to discard the item in the correct bin. Sometimes is the last thing on their mind. Obviously, we try to make that easy, right? With really good signage, with maybe fun signage, other ways to sort of gamify the approach. But one sort of effective way is if you can, and this becomes a material discussion more than anything. So if you can work with those who are purchasing items for events, our concessionaires, when we have giveaways from maybe sponsors, other materials that are on site, if we can figure out how to purchase those materials or those products that are made from responsibly made materials, and we can sort of drive them into one of a few choices of waste streams, we make it easier on the patron, on the fan, to make that choice of where to discard the particular item. And I think a classic topic or a big topic would be beverages and food, right? So people come and eat food and consume beverages. So we're constantly looking at how those materials can be made from, responsible materials, but also we can do that in a way where we streamline the choices that a consumer has or a patron has of where they discard that when they're done.
I liked it when you also said gamification, because making it kind of fun, people will actually engage in that. They will look at it and be like, oh, that's kind of cool. I like the signage. I like how that's neat. So that's really a smart idea to make something fun, because people will follow that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And with you guys actually, you started sustainability, I believe it was 2008, 2009. That is one of the first earliest adopters I personally have come across.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I've been at AEG now about 2.5 going on 3 years, and so all of this, all credit goes to those who precede me. But there was a commitment from many years ago, and I'd say probably from the beginning of AEG forming, from our owner and our senior leadership, to sustainability and environmental issues. We've had a program, my predecessor and those before him who led our sustainability department and function. We're really visionaries and sort of looking at these topics and saying, hey, as an entertainment industry, back in 2008, 2007, around that time, we have impacts too, and we can and should be responsible. So I would say when the program, like all sustainability departments and functions, that the focus of that department has evolved from that period to now, right? Sustainability as a space and an industry has evolved, the way we talk about it, the topics we focus on, what it is. Just as you can go back to the environmental movement in the 70s and see the evolution from then until now. The program started out as really an energy services function. So owning a lot of buildings and infrastructure, how can this department and team support those buildings and infrastructure around making energy choices? So that's everything from working with utility contracts and fixing in and fixing out of energy positions based on market conditions to limit risk and exposure and reduce costs and generate efficiencies from the energy use, which is significant in large buildings. Fast forward to now, we sort of call this department sustainability, right? We have a broad, reaching, mission, vision, strategic framework touching a lot of topics, but I think it's, a lesson in, figuring out, when you're starting to talk about these issues, where a sustainability function and department can be additive and contribute to the business. What's the value that we can provide? And at that time, that value was, risk minimization, cost and efficiencies around, heavy energy use.
I love the fact that beginning 2007, 2008, you guys initially thought of the energy side of things, because a lot of people really weren't thinking, one, energy efficiency. Of course, people think cost reduction. We want to save money. Y'all were thinking actually about not only that, but how are we going to do it better? How are we going to do it right? Yeah. And with festivals, I would think that there's a huge energy consumption, especially with generators. And how are you guys combating that? Because that's going to be a large energy resource that you need.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting. We're going through a process, as sort of any good corporate sustainability department should. We're going through the process right now of setting our second generation sustainability goals and sort of looking at what are our big impacts when you measure topics like energy, waste, and water, and then you translate that to carbon emissions and start setting public-facing sustainability goals. So I mentioned that because energy, we're digging into energy, right? So where are our biggest sources of impact at our temporary events, and looking at solutions to get away from diesel burning generators into whether it's a hybrid approach between a generator and maybe a solar powered system that has a battery, and we can use that as a hybrid, and between that and a generator approach. Also, are there cleaner fuel sources, right? So can we look at like renewable diesel as an option in some of these generators? And obviously where we can in these festivals, we're tapping into grid power, right? So figuring out, where we can tap into grid power. And when you do that, you can make choices. I mean, it can get complex to sort of work with a utility company and figure out, are there sort of green or greener choices you can make on the source of that supply of energy. But we have more choice when we tap into grid power. But yeah, it's a lot of temporary power sources. And so, we're constantly looking at, new partners, new technologies, how we can clean that up a little bit.
There is a myriad of new technologies out there too, with renewable energy coming in generator form. I've met a few of them that it's cool stuff what they're doing, including salt batteries, which is sodium, sulfur, and chloride batteries, which are very cool. Basically, it's the need for lithium and some of those harder to find minerals and elements.
Yes.
But you touched on real quick about the O2 arena in London. And I read about how you guys are handling your food waste, which is pretty unique with worm casings. Worm digesters? Could you talk about that?
Yeah. I know a little about that. We have a wormery on site. So the O2 is probably, certainly we have a lot of really advanced sustainability leaders in our company. And I would think, I think there's a lot of cultural, push and regulatory push in Europe around really taking on these issues. And I think the O2 has embraced that and said, we're going to do that and go beyond. So we have a wormery on site. We have a pretty complex and diverse waste sorting and a system there too, in terms of the way in which we work back a house to make sure we generate and move waste into different streams. And, it's just one of those programs that, our team there is really proud of. We have a colleague who's really been the spearhead and leader of all that. And so just trying to do things. And ultimately, when we're doing that, we're trying to figure out, hey, when we're doing this work, how do we communicate that and talk about that to our fans, right? How can we get that in front of our patrons? And so, in fact, last fall at the O2, we launched a green rider. So essentially a document. So when an artist comes on tour, they have what's called a rider, right? A document that essentially says and lays out, here are, sort of my terms and conditions, here are requirements for being on site. It's the document that sort of we use to ensure that we're sort of meeting all the needs of that particular artist or that team. And what we've created at the O2 was a green rider for the venue, right? So really a document that outlines and lays out wormery and a sort of food separation included, all of our programs and efforts at the venue, and how we hope and encourage these artists and these teams to work with us. And I wouldn't say comply, because I don't think the industry is at the place yet where we're going to say, if you don't do these things, you're not going to be allowed to perform in our venue. And I don't think we want to take that approach.
No, you want to play friendly.
Yeah, I think in entertainment particularly, this work's exciting. People love their sports and sort of favorite musicians. And we approach it from the lens of optimism and collaboration. So it's an opportunity for us to create a document that said we really care about sustainability. Look at all that we're doing in the building. Look at all the opportunities that are in front of you to take this on when you show up. If you've got a document that says, here's what you care about, this is wonderful. Now these two can sort of meet each other. We can sit down and have a conversation and say, hey, what are the 2 or 3 things, or what are the list of things that we want to make sure that we do together when the artist is here? So I think having, something like that, I think we're going to see more of these like venue driven riders or documents. And, I think the O2 has been, a step ahead of most of the industry in that regard.
Well, also Europe as a whole is kind of well ahead of the United States. But that being said, this is a really good test. You can see what works, what doesn't work, and then you can just scale it up to all of your venues.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we've been able to. We're often learning from our colleagues in Europe. We have business in the UK and in France and in Germany. And, there's a lot that we gather, a lot of insight, that we gather from what they're either choosing to do or being required to do. But we learn a lot. And I think we also have seen it sort of go the other direction as well in some of what we've been doing in the US around introducing reusable cup systems in our US venues. Our European venues have now introduced it. We have a partner in the US called Our World, where we've used their Our Cup for going on the last 2.5 years or so. And, over the last year plus, our venues in both the UK. Now, we've had a small music venue in the UK that's been using a reusable cup program for many, many years, but they've taken these programs and they've added them into their venues. And now, in fact, even in Germany, in our venues in Hamburg and Berlin, we've not only introduced reusable cups, but we've built and installed wash infrastructure in our venues to wash those cups on site and put them back into use on site. So, it's just it's great to work for a company where there's constantly, someone in the business, someone in a venue or a festival somewhere that's taking that next step and doing the next thing. And I think it's our job and our team to, one, support that, be a part of that, help advance that forward, and then use that as a tool to help drive the rest of the business forward as well.
Absolutely. And, you've sparked a memory of mine. It can be done if people are just encouraged to do it. And what I mean by that is I was in Europe last winter for those Christmas markets that they have. And, you get your mulled wine, which they call glühwein, and it's in a ceramic cup. And you pay extra money for that cup. And you can either keep it as a souvenir. If you break it, you just bought it, or you return it and you get your money back.
Yeah. Yep.
And they rinse and recycle, and it's all, return cups. Same with their, if you're eating something, sometimes they're on a wafer, like an unflavored wafer that you could eat it if you wanted to or throw it away.
Yeah.
Or a plate and a fork, like a real plate. And you brought it back. And we just need to bring back that mentality of return your cup. This isn't you're not sacrificing anything. Bring it back.
Yeah, and that deposit model is an interesting approach. There's multiple ways to do it. In fact, that's our system. I know that I think we may be looking at maybe even adopting maybe a hybrid approach in Europe. But our Germany model is just that. There's essentially a deposit on that cup, and then you bring that cup back before you exit the venue, or you take it home with you. And our hope and our desire is that you're taking it home and continuing to reuse it. But you bring that cup back and you get your deposit back. We've taken the different approach with Our World in the US, where we were trying to sort of make these cups not very likable, or not very cool, not very desirable. Because what we don't want, at least in the model with our partner in the US, is they've created wash and reuse infrastructure and systems in cities. So their desire is to get that cup back. They transport that cup to their wash hub within the city, wash the cup, deliver it back to our venue. So what we're trying to do in those instances is keep those cups in the venues. And one way you do that is you try to make the cup look, undesirable. You don't want to make it too cool. You don't want someone to look at it and go, hey, I'm going to, stick this in my jacket or whatever and take it home.
Yeah, you want them to bring it back.
Yeah. So, I think I've got some cups in my cupboard from, when the San Francisco Giants, went to all their World Series, runs, and I stored those cups. I still use those cups. So I think a lot of people probably would use them for some time. And that's our hope when they do exit the building. But the system of using and washing within the building and keeping that local is just part of not only waste minimization, but waste avoidance.
And also materials to make new cups if they start disappearing on you. So, you want to keep that down as well. So, anything new and exciting coming up with respect to what AEG is doing or new technologies you guys are playing with?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, I think, first, from a corporate sustainability department function, which our team sort of represents, and I sort of use corporate lightly because at the end of the day, we're still an entertainment property company, and there's a lot of involvement and engagement from our team in our business. So we have team members in our sustainability program that support and work directly with our music business, our sports business, LA Live, et cetera. So we're pretty ingrained in the business. But one thing that I think we're excited about, and I think any good corporate sustainability department should be focusing on this, which is measuring against and setting sustainability targets. So we AEG as an organization set its first generation sustainability targets in 2015 against a 2010 baseline for achievement year in 2020. I think when I joined, 2020, as we all know, was a pandemic year, and sort of coming out of that, getting business back to normal, looking at our company and seeing some changes in our business. We knew, one, we needed to create a new baseline year for our next generation targets, which we're doing against 2022, and then set those second generation targets. So we've been measuring, going through the work of setting targets that are going to be focused on our scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, nice, as well as water impacts, a water reduction target, context-based water reduction targets. So looking at scarcity and other issues in local areas, and then a waste target, which will be a volume-based waste reduction target. But then also, how can we use responsibly materials in a different way, right? Are we avoiding single-use plastics, for example, things like that? So that's we're going to be releasing those targets later on this year. So we're hard at work at that. And I think in saying that too, I think setting the targets, the work in our business, our festivals, our venues, has always endured and continues, irrespective of having targets that are that we're working against. Having those targets and saying, hey, by 2030, 40, 50, this is what we're looking to achieve. One could argue that maybe what we're going to do today at a music festival in Long Beach may not change all that much by what we're trying to do from an energy perspective, and by 2040 or 2050. But it is significant, because to have that sort of point, you have that sort of flag in the ground, and that you're sort of marching towards. One, it helps decision making within the business. It helps us to be able to go to leadership and others and say, hey, whether we need resources or investments and time and staff and partners to achieve that, because we have these targets that we've released publicly and we said that we're going after. And I think people are just motivated by getting to a goal, right? Yeah. And so I think that's we're excited for that. But no, I think outside of that, when we look in our business, we are looking at certainly expanding this partnership that we have with Our World. We have it operating at 10 music venues in the U.S. and at 6 of our music festivals in the U.S. and planning to announce some bigger rollouts with that in the next few months or so. So we're excited about that. We're certainly we've been working with some temporary power companies. We've been started to slowly bring in solar powered solutions at our festivals. For example, we've worked with a company called Overdrive, and we had them out at Coachella and Stagecoach powering pieces of our festival. Each year we sort of expand that scope and that footprint, and have plans to continue to do that. And the work in Europe continues too, right? There's a lot of emphasis around trying to figure out, like, how can we do things like move out of natural gas and what we would call as electrification. So move to electricity-based power sourcing. And then with that, it gets exciting to start thinking about what are options when it comes to renewable energy, right? Whether it's on-site, our venues don't have a ton of on-site real estate, right? There's not a lot of roof space, a huge solar array. How can we invest in off-site solutions? How can we clean up our power supply?
Absolutely. And, energy diversification is the most important thing, because if you rely on only one resource, and something glitches, something goes wrong, you got a problem that's going to affect everything. So I love the fact you're looking at multiple alternatives, which is very important to do things successfully. So Erik, if people wanted to find you, other than giving out your personal phone number, what is the best way?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd say, certainly LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn. It's a great place to connect. Our AEG sustainability team, we have at aegworldwide.com, there's you can find under the About Us, there's a sustainability page. We're actually refreshing the page, and and putting out a new page soon, which will have our sustainability strategic framework, right? Our mission, vision, some of our core principles, the topics that we're working against. And then as we release our sustainability targets, we'll also have, those impacts and goals there, as well as, how we're tracking against that. So I'd encourage people to check that out. Probably over in the next few weeks or so, we'll have that up and live. We have social media accounts on X and Instagram and all that. So we know it's important to talk about this work. Sustainability and environmental issues, it's serious work, right? We know what we're up against. We know some of the challenges we're facing, but it's also, I think, important for us to do this work in a way which engages and brings people in, right? Sports and entertainment is a place. I always talk about it of heart, pulling on the heartstrings on the hearts and minds, right? People are extremely passionate about their favorite musician or their favorite athlete or sports team, and we're doing sustainability within that system. I think we not only have an opportunity, but a responsibility to talk about our work and talk about it in a way that's uplifting and positive and inspiring. And hopefully, it gives someone who may be at one of these events the inspiration to go home in their own lives and maybe change a behavior or take something else on, because, hey, they may have seen this happening from their favorite artist or at their favorite festival or at their favorite sporting event. So whether it's on social media or on our website or in other places, we're trying to tell the stories, not in a boastful way, but in a way that says, hey, we're not perfect. We're on a journey. We haven't fully figured this out, but here's how we're doing, right? Here's where we're at. We're at this place in the journey, and there's really no end finish line in sustainability, right? This is continuous, but I think our responsibility is to continue to make progress and to be held accountable to that progress. So, but you can't do that unless you tell people about how you're doing. So yeah, all those sources, we're constantly out there trying to talk about this work in an inspiring, serious and real, but fun way.
I always like to mention to people with respect to sustainability, if they push back, it's like, we're not trying to take anything away.
Yeah.
We're just trying to make it better. Trying to do it differently. That's it. We're just trying to be better. So I love the fact what you're doing and what AEG is doing is, especially with the large footprint you guys have in this world, it's important that you guys are leaders in the sustainability initiatives.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. It takes a lot. It takes a lot, right? It takes a lot of contribution from everyone, individuals, organizations, and companies. And look, this work's hard, right? It's not easy. It's not easy. I think what helps us is we often sit in meetings and say, all right, well, we got a plan for Cali Vibes Festival in Long Beach. This is sort of, an actual real conversation we had with our Golden Voice colleagues. And I think, one of the first meetings we had is we sort of admitted to ourselves that putting on a music festival is inherently unsustainable, right? There's no sort of purity in that around doing it. And then you sort of you take a breath and you sort of sit there and then you say, all right, well then let's get to work, right? Like, let's go do something. We've already kind of relieved the tension and pressure of having to be perfect. It's part of our business. People rely on it. It's what we're doing. Now let's get to work and let's do really good work that we know is important, but let's also pilot and try some things. And if they fail or they weren't as impactful, then let's try the next thing. And so, there's a spirit around that in our company and how we embrace and talk about these issues. But I think sometimes, we, in this industry and in this space, we, are expecting from ourselves and maybe from others and from sort of the stakeholders in the industry perfection and massive progress that's leaping ahead. Incrementalism is often viewed as a bad thing. I don't think it's all that bad. Sometimes an incremental strategic step, or 3 or 4 of them, is a way to make a really big leap, and steps forward are steps forward. So yeah, I think embracing the complexity, understanding that it's hard, kind of admitting that, deflating kind of the stress in the room does free up the thinking and free up the decision-making to get after good work.
I could not agree more, because you just kind of hit on my tagline, which is no shaming, no blaming, and every little bit helps. Yes. So that just kind of condensed everything there. So, Erik, thank you so much for your time today, guys. Please check out what AEG is doing with their sustainability initiatives. It's very important work. They are actually benchmarking for everyone else to follow in their lead. So check them out. Check out Erik on LinkedIn. We'll catch you guys later. Thank you, Erik, so much for your time. The work you're doing is so important.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Wendy. Appreciate you having me.
Anytime. You guys take care. We'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.